We'll intervene whenever we decide it's in our national security interest to intervene. And if you don't like it, lump it.
The problem with America is not that we go around marauding around the world imposing ourselves. The problem with America in the last 10, 15 years, since the end of the Cold War, really in the last 60 years, is that we've been too slow to get involved.
I don't know how many Iraqi civilians were killed, but I can assure you that the number is the absolute minimal that it's possible in modern warfare.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
You know, that land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes and your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
Welcome to the darkened hour.
Okay, hello everyone, and hello Adam.
Good afternoon, Richard.
So, Adam, if I was to describe the subject of today's interview as being, we're going to talk about an intelligence agency that had information on the hijackers in the country, but didn't pass it on to the FBI. The audience might think, okay, yeah, I know this one. We're going to be talking about Alex Station, right? Or if I was to talk about an intelligence agency which had a computer system which figured out where the hijackers were and what they were doing and so on, but then didn't neutralize that information, people might think, oh, that's the NSA and ThinFred, William Binney's program. And it is, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Able Danger at the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, right? And the man most associated with that, Colonel Anthony Schaffer. So why don't you start off, Adam, by just picking up that story wherever. I might have to ask you to mention a bit about what the DIA is at some point, because unlike the CIA, it's not so well known at all, right? So if you can throw that in, but give us a narrative of this whole story. You've just written, I think, one of your longest articles on it. Very good article. We'll link to that. So pick up that narrative wherever you wish to.
Right. Well, I'll just explain what the Defense Intelligence Agency is. The Defense Intelligence Agency is an intelligence agency inside the United States federal government. It's a component of the Department of Defense and the United States intelligence community as a whole, the NSA, the CIA, and in which the DIA intelligence operations extend beyond the zones of like combat, and approximately like half of its employees serve overseas. And there are hundreds of locations inside the United States in embassies and in embassies of over 140 countries. They're much more expansive and much more covert than, say, the CIA, which is an arm unto itself, where the Defense Intelligence Agency is an arm of the State Department itself. Okay,
you know what? I think on another occasion, we might do a full show on the Defense Intelligence Agency, because, I mean, one of the things that fascinated me about it is its budget is actually bigger than the CIA's. I'm correct about that, aren't I?
Yeah, but by the billions. It's much more fun.
There's volumes, libraries of books written on the history of the CIA, which I'm sure there's a lot more we don't know, of course. But then you've got this other organization, even bigger, and who knows anything about it, really? So that fascinates me. I'd love to delve into it deeper, but we'll keep it on, sort of saying the minimum we need today, because we want to talk about this specific program, Able Danger. One question I have about the DIA, though, and people will see why this is relevant in a minute. Do they have the same restrictions as the CIA in operating inside the United States? The CIA are forbidden from doing that, and the US military don't because of possum comitatus, right? That they're restricted. Does that restriction apply to the DIA?
Yes, it does. Actually, this is actually brought up in the 2006 Senate Select Committee regarding Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaffer, whereas the Department of Defense has to abide by Posse Comitatus Act and only use information in regards to non-U.S. persons. Now, that's something I'm going to bring up in regards to the Able Danger program, because it's going to be very important as to why the information collected by Able Danger was not shared with federal agencies like the FBI.
Okay. So go on then and tell us a bit about Able Danger and all that.
Sure. We'll start with the two co-opted generals that helped create Able Danger, and that's General Peter Shoemaker, who is the chief of staff of the Army, and General Hugh Shelton, who is the chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff. So by the spring of 1999, they would co-opt a covert military operation, which is codenamed Able Danger. The plan was to operate independently from government agencies like the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA, and develop their own sensitive information in the transnational terrorism field, which involved other military agencies like the Joint Special Operations Command, or in short, JSOC, and the Defense Intelligence Agency. This would also include agencies within the U.S. Army, which are the U.S. Special Operations Command, or SOCOM for short, and the Land Information Warfare Center, LIWA for short. They both support the Intelligence and Security Command of the United States. The Able Danger team was very small. This is a very secretive, covert group that even many high-ranking officials in the Pentagon weren't even aware about. The only people who were aware of this was Shoemaker and Shelton at the time. Now, the Able Danger team was selected due to their specific fields of intelligence gathering. And these were the following people. U.S. Navy Captain Scott Philpott, he was selected as the Able Danger team leader. U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaffer of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Eric Kleinsmith, Army Major and the Chief of Intelligence of the Land Information Warfare Activity. James D. Smith, who's a defense contractor from Orion Scientific Systems, and Dr. Eileen Presser. She's from the Land Information War Activity, and she's the analytical lead. Now, according to Anthony Schaffer, the concept of Able Danger was actually General Shoemaker's idea. By summer of 1999, Schaffer would then begin promoting the Able Danger operation to CIA representatives from Alex Station in a classified meeting in SOCOM headquarters, located at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, in the U.S. Army Special Operations Command. After his presentation, the CIA representatives from Alex Station, which is a virtual station also collecting data, metadata about bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, according to Schaffer, in a Senate Select Committee hearing done in 2005, he claims the CIA reps would not fully endorse Able Danger and said that they would interfere with CIA's Alex Station. And he told Schaffer that they would not share any information with anyone within the U.S. Army. So you could see already that even before Able Danger was starting, that the CIA was automatically dismissing any type of competing agency in which was obviously, because Schaffer was quite shocked afterwards. He was thinking in his head naively that he thought that everybody in the United States was working together to fight against terrorism.
Well, more than that, they were quite overt about it, weren't they? And the reason the CIA just said, well, yeah, we don't want you getting the credit if you found something out that we didn't. Schaffer said they were that overt. They didn't try and even hide the reasons under some sort of, security breach or something.
Right. I think that has a lot to do with the arrogance of the CIA, thinking they could get away with not sharing information with other competing federal or even Pentagon agencies.
Well, yeah, in a sense they do get away with it.
Sure, right, at the end, exactly. But that just goes to show you that there's different agendas here regarding the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies like the CIA. But Able Danger was to collect any information using HUMINT, which is human intelligence, and SIGINT, which is signals intelligence, regarding terror cells abroad and inside the United States. Schaffer would then meet with General Shoemaker in September of '99, in which Shoemaker allowed Schaffer's Afghan unit, which is codenamed Stratus Ivy, which was a special mission unit that conducted direct support to the Department of Defense and was focused on offensive information operations. They would use more so human intelligence by going into madrasas or shopkeepers in Afghanistan and collect information about certain individuals they were monitoring. Now, with Shoemaker's idea, Schaffer then went to the leader of the Able Danger team, Scott Philpott, and pitched the idea of using his Land of Information Warfare Center with the Stratus Ivy unit. And they both immediately agreed. They thought this was a great idea. So Schaffer immediately then tells the U.S. Special Operations Command, SOCOM officials, to start looking into the U.S. Army's Land Information Warfare activity and its Information Dominance Center for potential use in assisting in the Able Danger program. So they're using these electronic devices inside the U.S. Army to coincide with the human intelligence from the Able Danger and Stratus Ivy units. So they would get massive amounts of data in short time. I'll tell you in a bit. But by the winter of that same year of '99, Able Danger was able to identify 2 of the 3 terror cells inside the United States. One cell was called the Brooklyn cell. That was led by Omar Abdel Rahman of the Al Farouk Mosque, who would later be involved with, who was involved with the landmarks plot. And
in what sense was it led by him? This is actually something couldn't quite get my head around in Schaffer's book. In what sense was it led by him? Because he was in jail at that point.
Well, I mean, even though he was in jail, he's still the leader of the Brooklyn cell, because once Rahman went into prison, you still had notable members still around inside the Al Farouk Mosque. In fact, ironically, now that you bring it up, Al Farouk Mosque is still operating inside Brooklyn today.
Okay,
today.
So actually this, I did want to bring this up. I don't want to take you on a tangent now when you're explaining Able Danger, but it's one of those things that when I thought about it, I'm surprised it never occurred to me, because we talked all about the 93 bombing and the landmarks plot and then the arrest of the conspirators. They all went to jail, and Rahman eventually died there, didn't he, a couple of years ago? But I never thought to ask what became of the Brooklyn Mosque and the refugee center there, right? I just kind of assumed it all sort of fizzled out in my mind. I mean, but you'll say, no, it didn't. It carries on through 9/11 and to this day. You still have this, the radicalized mosque going on there. And more than that, Mohammed Atta was associated with it. So yeah, I might be interrupting your narrative there, Adam.
No, not at all. In fact, no, because a lot of the original members of 1993 are all in jail at this point. Mahmoud Abuelima, Salami, for their participation in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. But you also had other members who weren't involved in that bombing, but were involved with the landmarks plot. Omar Abdel Rahman, Sadiq Ali, and a number of others. It was like 12 others. But those are the more notable members. And that's what a lot of people tend to confuse, especially in regards to Imad Salem's participation. A lot of people, for example, just to give a short leeway here, Imad Salem is actually confused with building the bomb of World Trade Center bombing. That's not true. Yeah. He helped build the bomb for the landmarks plot, in which the FBI was monitoring a warehouse in Jamaica.
Yeah,
Queens.
so Imad Salem did a recording. He was the FBI's mole in the cell and the whole story there.
Right.
And he did do a recording where it did sound like he was saying, I built the bomb. Your informant, your confidential informant built the bomb that went off the trade center.
That's right.
But he's not, and he's cleared that up, and it's not consistent with what happened. Yeah.
With Schaffer here, he's actually just going by the information that he gathered using human intelligence regarding about the Farouk Mosque of 1993 World Trade Center bombing and the landmarks plot. Now, Rahman was still considered, even to his death, the leader of the Brooklyn Soul, the Al Farouk Mosque.
Right. Wow.
Right, and right now, to this very day, Al Farouk Mosque Al Masjid is called, is still operating in Brooklyn to this very day. So it's open still.
And what Schaffer is saying is that Mohammed Atta was involved in that mosque in some way. He went there.
No, it did because the other cell that he's referring to is the Brooklyn, the Hamburg cell. That's the Hamburg cell. So you have because there's a lot of confusion. You have the Brooklyn cell, which is sometimes confused with Mohammed Atta, but it's not. There's two cells. Brooklyn cell, that's Omar Abdul Rahman. The Hamburg cell, which is Mohammed Atta. Now, Mohammed Atta was in New York for a little bit.
Right, but not the Brooklyn cell.
Right, he's not involved with the Brooklyn cell.
Okay. So there's no 9/11 Brooklyn cell connection.
No.
Okay,
Separate entities. But Orion Systems would start using and constructing large-scale charts to connect faces pinned to this chart in connection with other terrorist individuals, such as the chart started with bin Laden, of course, being in the middle, and then his connections to a face of Ayman al-Zawahiri, for example. And then they would draw a line to Omar Abdul Rahman, Ali Muhammad, Wadi al-Hajj, Mohammed Atta, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So you're seeing this branch out effect on this chart. And the chart in 10 months' time had like 100 faces on it. Maybe.
And what Abid Danger is doing, it's going into things like Al-Qaeda chat rooms and looking at financial transaction details and who's meeting who where, and just creating and like, I think it was either William Binney or Thomas Drake said about the NSA, that the interesting information is who's talking to who. If you see the connections, you can get the whole web and put it together. So it sounded to me like a similar thing to the NSA's ThinFed program. Because I mean, there's probably huge differences, but it sounds like similar in result to what it was kicking up.
Right. Whereas the NSA is getting direct information from electronic surveillance.
Right.
The Able Danger team was using human intelligence through signals intelligence to gather information from third sources.
Okay. So you said that they broke 3 cells, or how you put it, the Brooklyn, that they had some monitoring of Brooklyn and the Hamburg cell, and what was the other one?
No, that I never understand who was the third cell. This could be a renegade group of people that may have involved with maybe the Hamburg or the Brooklyn cell support, but they weren't a major organization or a major conduit, such as Mohammed Atta.
Right. There's no reason to think they got the West Coast cell of Khalid al-Mihdhar.
Right. Well, that's a very good point, actually, because remember now, the West Coast cell could be, is even though they're affiliated with the 9/11 attacks, they were separate from the Hamburg cell because they were monitored by Saudi intelligence, whereas U.S. intelligence and Israeli intelligence were monitoring the Hamburg and the Brooklyn cell, the Al Farouk Mosque. So it's not particularly clear who that third cell was, but it would have to be either the cell out west or the connections with the Maktab al-Khidmat, which is the Afghan Services Office in Arizona, because that's the first office inside the United States ever built.
Well, I'm just noticing in his book, Anthony Schaffer talks about that they picked up on a lot of activity in Yemen in the year 2000 and realized there was a lot going on in Yemen prior to the Cole bombing. So there was a connection, like a strong connection between the Yemen hub and the West Coast cell, right, in terms of, was it Khalid al-Mihdhar's wife there, or was it Nafar Hamzi? I forget which one, but one of them had a wife actually living at the Yemen hub, right, and they were phoning from inside the United States. So that caused me to wonder.
Yeah, that's Khalid al-Mihdhar. That the home is owned by Ahmed al-Khada. And that's the conduit to which all al-Qaeda operatives were going through. And even though these cells inside the United States may operate independently in terms of goals, which they wanted to achieve, they also are similarly involved with one another. They flow between one another because their agenda is the same. It's the attack inside the United States. Whether they know each other. For example, Ramzi Youssef and Osama bin Laden didn't know each other. They heard of each other, but they didn't know each other, even though they both conducted operations separately. Ramzi Youssef with the 93 bombing of the World Trade Center, bin Laden somehow involved with the 9/11 bombing of the World Trade Center in 2001.
Hmm.
Now, the Able Danger program was using data mining techniques to collect this information. And by 2000, the Able Danger unit would begin informing General Shoemaker about the information collected thus far. However, this is really important. U.S. Special Operations Command lawyers would object to the use of the intelligence regarding Mohammed Atta, Ziad Jarrah, and Marwan al-Shehi. They were suggesting that all three would qualify as U.S. persons because all three had U.S. student visas. In time, over the years, Schaffer would begin losing support of the Defense Intelligence Agency because of this point regarding the SOCOM lawyers, restricting the use of any intelligible information regarding the Hamburg cell. So they didn't want to be seen as spying on American citizens, even though the irony is that they really technically weren't U.S. citizens, even though they had temporary student visas at the time. Now, according to Major Eric Kleinsmith, he's actually ordered to destroy 3 terabytes of information collected from the Able Danger, which is 16 months to this point. The order came from somebody within the SOCOM office, where he told him in a jokingly but warning manner that holding the information regarding past 30 days is against the law. Now, this, however, would be determined not to be factually true in regards to the Hamburg cell in a 2000 Senate Select Committee hearing, where it's later determined that Otto was not considered a U.S. citizen, and that's coming from the testimony of William Dugan, who was representing the Department of Defense. So all that information is destroyed from Able Danger now, all the information. But Schaffer actually thinks that not everything was destroyed, and the fact that the Department of Defense is still holding on to most, if not all, of the information that Able Danger collected.
Okay, so to what extent do you think that holds up, right? Because I mean, it was only a couple of episodes ago we were talking about, was it credible that the FBI were just so concerned about not opening Zacharias Moussaoui's laptop because they didn't want to violate the rights of this French Algerian guy? Okay, so is the FBI an organization that's hamstrung by bureaucracy, or is this an excuse? Okay, is this like behavior facilitating attacks? And here we run into the same question again, right? If like, well, and because with Zacharias Moussaoui, we can look back now and say, well, clearly there was justification. Like there was clearly sufficient level of justification at the time. That was obvious at the time to search his laptop. And looking at this now, Able Danger had to delete this information, and they were unable not only to utilize it themselves, but to pass it on to the FBI, right? So do you think these legal does it hold any water, that these legal justifications have any validity to them, or does it again put the question on the table that there are 2 ways of looking at this, and one is this was yet another example of like behavior that allowed the attacks to go ahead?
Well, I mean, one would have to be very careful in implicating that certain agencies within the U.S. government wanted these attacks to happen. Now, I if you were to put a gun to my head, I would say, yes. Do I have absolute verifiable information to suggest so? I could make a good argument for it. Sure. I really could, especially for the CIA.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the FBI, that's a little bit tougher, and I don't think so. But although their actions suggest that they wanted something like this to happen, especially in the case of Zacharias Moussaoui, where Colleen Rowley, involved with the Minneapolis FBI office, even states that she was rebuffed by her superior, which is Robert Bowman, who's the director of Minnesota Field Office.
Sure. It's just when you see the same, like essentially we've established CIA, right, FBI, DIA, and NSA had sufficient information probably to stop the attacks, right? But then bureaucracy got in the way in all of them, or something got in the way. You can't then say that's random, right? There's got to be some consistent factor behind all of these, and that could be an excessive bureaucracy, or it could be intentional. But we're running into it again here. The other thing I read in Anthony Schaffer's book, or it could have been your article, or both, was references to Waco, right? That they either weren't going to pass the information on to the FBI or weren't going to do it because they didn't want another Waco incident. That was called upon as a justification for not passing it on, which I found really bizarre. Can you shine any light on that?
I probably couldn't.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, one thing about Waco is that I was around when it happened.
I'm not really asking you to shine light on Waco, but just on the use of that as a justification for not utilizing this information in able danger.
Right, actually, that was it. All right, I understood. I was actually confused. I thought you maybe wanted to go on a tangent with Waco, but no, yeah, that.
No.
In fact, Schaffer actually, right? No, yeah, right. But Schaffer actually would conduct meetings with the FBI, and each time he would try to hold closed-door meetings, he actually was interfered with by SOCOM lawyers, and the reason was simple. The SOCOM lawyers said that the unit, the Able Danger Unit, was not allowed to share information that they collected with this covert operation with the FBI because of quote unquote fear for potential blowback. And the blowback was regarding to like Waco, whereas, that was intentional. They could have arrested, I'm sorry, what's that? David Koresh?
Koresh, yeah.
David Koresh.
Yeah.
Like they saw him jogging in the morning, right? They could have arrested him.
Yeah, the whole thing stinks.
Right, yeah. But what the SOCOM lawyers were saying is that they didn't want to share information with outside agents, especially an internal agency in the United States like the FBI. And then they use that information from Able Danger, and then they go and arrest or try to arrest and stuff.
Well, it just seems like a bizarre justification. We can't tell the FBI anything in case they blockade a mosque, shoot bullets into it, set it on fire, and kill all the Muslims. It's like just the FBI are like that. I don't. That just seems like the most far out justification for. I
don't know. I don't understand the almost as pertinent need not to share any information, like any type of information. Although on the judicial level, yes, you're not allowed to use. Human or signals intelligence against any U.S. citizen and then hold on to this information for a period of 30 days. That was the legal reason why. That's actually true. But as I pointed out with the testimony of William Dugan, the Department of Defense representative, he actually tells the Senate Select Committee hearing chairman, Arlen Specter, that Atta was not technically a U.S. person. And that, yes, he may have had a temporary student U.S. visa. It didn't technically make him a U.S. person, so that the information shouldn't have been destroyed on orders of the Department of Defense or the U.S. Army. So SOCOM lawyers actually later on would then meet with Robert Worthington, who's the director of the Able Danger team from June of 2000 to January of 2001. And he tells them that from now on, you cannot hold any type of future meeting with the FBI regarding this subject nature. And by May of 2001, Schaffer actually is all but shut out by the U.S. Army and SOCOM from extending any assistance from his own unit, Stratus Ivy, to help with the Able Danger unit. So now he's left alone. And he has no type of help regarding Able Danger. In other words, he's still with the Able Danger unit, but he really doesn't have any legal backing from the U.S. Army. Fast forward, after the 9/11 attacks, Schaffer would then be contacted in 2 weeks after the attacks from Eileen Presser, who was part of the Able Danger team. She meets him with coffee, and then she shows him one of the charts produced by the LIWA team, the Land Information Warfare Activity Unit. The chart was produced in January of 2000. And on the chart was a photo of Muhammad Atta. And she shows this to Schaffer. Schaffer is like completely, his jaw hits the floor. He's absolutely sick to his stomach because Able Danger was absolutely on the right track, monitoring this group. And in 2003, while he's in Afghanistan, because he's still deployed in Afghanistan afterwards, Schaffer would hold a meeting with Philip Zelikow and the 9/11 Commission. And he was actually allowed by SOCOM lawyers to talk about in full the full covert operation of Able Danger in its entirety. Zelikow is like completely shocked, and he actually, after the meeting, he gives Schaffer his card.
Just 30 seconds on who Philip Zelikow is, please.
Oh, Philip Zelikow is the director of the 9/11 Commission. And Zelikow actually gives Schaffer his card, and he actually says to him, quote, "What you said here today is very important," end quote. And he thanks him for the information. Months later, Schaffer would actually return the calls of Zelikow's office. In that, he's actually told that, "Oh yes, let me look into what Zelikow wants for me to do with you." And then when Schaffer calls back weeks later, the person actually tells Schaffer, we don't know who that person is, but the staffer actually tells Schaffer, I'm sorry, his name is Chris Kojum, by the way, Chris Kojum. So he tells Chris Kojum, who's part of the 9/11 Commission staff, tells him that, well, we know what we know about Able Danger, and that's all we want to know. End quote. Like, that's what he told him specifically. Schaffer returns to the United States in March 23rd of 2004. And immediately on his return to the United States, he finds out his top secret SCI clearance is suspended. And the reason for this is simple, because he actually tells the 9/11 Commission about the Able Danger operation. So for the preceding months and weeks and months afterwards, he's actually labeled persona non grata, somebody who's not allowed inside the most sensitive areas of the U.S. Army or the Department of Defense. And so the Pentagon actually goes as far as labeling him as an outsider. He's still technically with the Army, but he's not allowed to give any type of information, shared information with anybody, and so they restrict his manner of speech. So he goes and meets with Pennsylvania Representative Kurt Weldon in an office in a meeting. And while there, he's with Louis Libby and another person, and he tells Weldon about his situation. And Weldon actually says, all right, let me get my staffer to call the 9/11 Commission. And so he does. And the person actually calls Chris Kojum again of 9/11 Commission staff. And he tells him, what do you know about Able Danger and Anthony Schaffer? And so Chris Kojum tells him, quote, oh yes, we've heard of Anthony Schaffer, but we decided not to use the Able Danger story in the 9/11 Commission report. So the staffer tells Chris Kojum, why not? And the staffer tells him, Chris Kojum tells him, in no uncertain terms, flat out, it didn't fit with the story that the commission wanted to tell, end quote.
So what did ultimately appear in the commission report about Able Danger?
Nothing. In fact, Schaffer's testimony, still to this day, it's actually his testimony, Mark Rossini's closed-door testimony, and Thomas Drake of the NSA, who gave closed-door testimony meetings in which they gave real pertinent, sensitive information that was not used in the 9/11 Commission report. And Lord only knows what they said. And according to all three, they said that they had information which could have stopped the or somehow interfere with the 9/11 attacks in general, because they had human and signals intelligence about every single one of the operatives involved in the attacks. That's coming from Thomas Drake, no less, that they had information regarding all of the people involved with the 9/11 attacks, all the 19 hijackers, so to speak, 19. Anyway, Able Danger's information is not used in the 9/11 Commission, and he's barely ever mentioned, even in the monographs at the end. His name is mentioned there, but there's no, in the book itself, there's no mention of Schaffer's Able Danger unit anywhere in the 9/11 Commission. So Weldon and Schaffer, they couldn't believe what they were hearing. They couldn't believe it. So Weldon actually goes, and you could go on YouTube and you'll see him going before the U.S. House of Representatives, and he's like imploring both the Democrats and the Republicans, saying this is not a separate partisan issue. This is an issue involving Anthony Schaffer and the United States itself. involved in that they were slandering Schaffer for no good reason other than what he was telling the truth about the Able Danger operation. And there was no good reason at all by the Department of Defense to keep him as persona non grata and suspend his benefits and keep him from even giving full testimony on his behalf in the 9/11 in the Senate Select Committee headed by Arlen Specter. In fact, he had to speak. Mark Zaid, who's a lawyer representing Schaffer, had to speak on his behalf because Schaffer was not allowed to testify.
Okay, so sorry, go ahead.
That I would say that would probably be the end of Able Danger. And ironically enough, you don't hear anything anymore about this because in 2006, when Weldon was deploying to the media, to the House of Representatives about Able Danger, it seemed that the story just died in 2007 forward. Nothing's heard from him, even to the present time.
Anthony Schaffer, just to sort of spoken about Able Danger, let's just say what happened to him. He was redeployed to Afghanistan in the years after 9/11, and that's what the majority of his book, Heart of Darkness, is about. Now, that was published 2011 time, I think, 2010, 2011. And he mentions Able Danger then. There's obviously an interesting story to the publication of the book, of the Pentagon buying up copies and heavily redacting parts. So, yeah, it's the only book I've ever read where you get to a page and it's just black lines, the whole page, where the information is redacted. But his book was A, a bestseller, and B, mentions Able Danger. Right. So, and also, Adam, you were telling me before about the level of persecution that Anthony Schaffer endured in the years after. So maybe tell us something about his years post 9/11 with the persecution and the publication of his book and the shenanigans around that.
Right. The book is named Operation Darkheart. I have a copy. It's a very good book, actually. It talks in full depth about his deployment to Afghanistan as well as the Able Danger operation itself. When he's deployed to Afghanistan, he's actually called back to the United States because they don't want him in Afghanistan anymore. They didn't want nothing to do with him. Instead of just letting him go and giving him a dishonorable discharge, because by doing that, he actually could talk to the media and give testimony about the Able Danger program. But by suspending him, which is pretty smart, they're restricting him to not give any type of testimony or any type of information to the media regarding his involvement with the operation, because they didn't want anybody on the outside, the public actually, to know about the details of Able Danger. After all that presided and his suspension was lifted by the Department of Defense in 2007, I think, he actually writes the book, Operation Darkheart, and he co-authors the book. The first, I think, is, I want to say 11,000 copies, 8,000 to 11,000 copies. They're actually bought by the Pentagon and destroyed. And so what are they trying to tell you? They're trying to say, we don't want the public to know about what Able Danger was, what it involved, and what it could have prevented. And so what they did was they redacted the book, much of it anyway. So even though you could buy the book today, it's heavily redacted. So there's a lot of.
Was the idea there to get rid of the unredacted? Were they unredacted copies that came out first, and then the Pentagon wanted to get rid of them? So the copy that people would read would be a redacted one. So was it kind of successful in that it got rid of the unredacted copies?
It did, and the problem is that it really didn't show them in a really good light by doing so. What was the information that's redacted? What didn't they want us to see? That's the question. And so, but we'll never know the answer because that information is not privy to the American public as of right now.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you have to say on this topic, Adam? I think we've covered Able Danger pretty well.
Yeah, well, like I said, with Able Danger itself, most people are a little bit more familiar with Alex Station than Able Danger. Able Danger actually had enough information, more than enough, to warrant to share it with the FBI. And again, much like Alex Station, where the FBI wanted to use the information from the CIA to arrest Khalid al-Minar and Nawaf al-Hazmi out west, they were refrained from doing so. With Able Danger, they had information not just regarding the Brooklyn Silver Rockman, but with Mohammed Atta out east, the Hamburg cell, where they could have shared that information and started monitoring them right from 1999. And they were refrained from doing so, this time from the Department of Defense. So for people who want to say, well, it just goes to show you that they probably knew what was going to happen, I would be careful, but I wouldn't disagree with you in regards that they wanted these attacks to happen because of course, what came afterwards, which was beneficial to not just the Pentagon, but to the intelligence apparatuses who got a blank check, and removing the judicial restrictions, which were helpful to the American public. But now they're not, because our information is now collected without a warrant. So get yourself familiarized with Able Danger as well as Alex Station. So that's what I would suggest to the listener.
Very good. And a good place to do that is Adam's article, which we will link to below. Thank you very much indeed, Adam, and we'll be back in a few days for more.
Thank you very much, Richard.